Hello everyone, you may notice that today's video and potentially the next couple of videos look a bit different. Our video editor is from Bangladesh and is currently experiencing the lockdowns enforced due to the current civil unrest over there. We're not going to pretend to be nearly as knowledgeable about the subject as we could be, but the long and short of it is, we currently can't reach our mate over there. We pray for his safety and that the bloodshed will end swiftly. For the time being, we've done our best to scrape something together, which we hope you will enjoy. Thank you for watching. Oh, has anyone's heart stopped racing yet? The Hungarian Grand Prix threw up so much drama it's hard to know where to begin. From strategy to collisions to radio fracas, the Hungarian Grand Prix delivered in droves. The unignorable fact of the matter is, however, that the biggest flashpoints of all were contained to within two teams, Red Bull and McLaren. So great are the implications that we won't be able to cover everything in this video alone, and we are certainly going to be kept pretty busy up until next week in Belgium. But for today, I think we need to talk about Max Verstappen, because he is not happy at all. Want to know why Red Bull may have crossed the line at the Hungarian Grand Prix? Max is bearing the brunt of the criticism, but if you ask us, Red Bull are once again getting away with scapegoating their drivers. I think it's best if we start off with a summary of how the race unfolded at the Hungaroring. Even into the first corner there was drama, as the front three went 3 wide into the first 2 corners, with Verstappen going well wide and being told to reinstate Norris to second place. Yet again, Norris seemed quick off the line, but as with the other races recently, the second phase is where he lost the lead into the first corner. What followed was a race of mixed strategies that left us with a headache, with drivers attempted the undercut being rewarded early, but the longer runners seeing returns at the end of the race. It was this strategy mashup that caused McLaren to pull in Lando to cover off Hamilton, but in doing so, undercut his teammate Oscar Piastri, who had been comfortably leading the race after taking the lead into the first corner. The final stages of the race for McLaren were a pretty uncomfortable listen, however ultimately for the long-term success of the team, the right decision was made. Further down the field, George Russell and Sergio Perez both maximised their races after a disappointing start to the weekend, charging through the field and going longer than their contemporaries to secure the best possible results, given their starting positions. Despite the excitement at the top of the field, it was a pretty disappointing weekend for many of the midfield teams, with Alonso furious in his Aston Martin and Pierre Gasly forced into an early retirement, with Alpine returning to their usual clown show. A quick mention for Hamilton, who reached the podium for the 200th time, which is a pretty astounding achievement, especially considering the difficulty of the race today, where he had to battle off faster cars on far younger tyres, and it must have been one of the sweeter podiums so far in his career. As well as Tsunoda, who was overjoyed to cross the line with yet another points finish, and on a one-stopper no less. Piastri, following the heart-in-mouth reinstatement of his lead, went on to win his first race in Formula 1, with the understated Aussie proving to be more akin to Kimi Raikkonen with his muted celebrations. Overall, a great weekend for McLaren, which could have really had the shine taken off of it, but Norris really did need some convincing, though we can't really blame him for that. Now, if you're thinking a certain instant is missing from our summary, you'd be correct. So let's address the Red Bull in the room. What the hell are they doing over there? It really does seem like the tension has never left the team and just keeps showing itself in different guises from weekend to weekend. This weekend was meant to be the great return to form, with many upgrades being bolted onto the current leaders of both championships. On a weekend where their current closest competitors brought nothing new to the table, Red Bull were looking to capitalize on their first major overhaul of the season. However, it was pretty clear from early on that things weren't going quite as well as maybe they were hoping. It was all the way back in qualifying where the first signs of frustration for Max bubbled up to the surface, with him claiming that despite the team bringing a plethora of upgrades, he was unable to get the car to the front row, despite him maximizing the car's performance. I'm frustrated because we are not fast enough, and it has been for a while like that. This weekend we brought quite a few upgrades to the car and we're still not fast enough, so yeah, if I'm not showing emotions anymore, then I don't care about myself. So I do care a lot. So just frustrating. I felt like I tried everything I could to try and get pole. I know it's very important around here also and for the championship, and we just lacked pace again. And clearly this frustration wasn't contained to Saturday, with a pretty incredible radio back and forth occurring between Max and the pit wall. The performance of the car failed to improve on Sunday, with Max being entirely reserved to the fact that McLaren would have won regardless of any strategy decisions, as the papaya car was a rocket ship. However, that didn't stop Max from taking umbrage with the car's performance, as he didn't only finish behind the McLaren cars, but Hamilton and Leclerc, and nearly both Ferraris, after somehow escaping a penalty after the race for his incident with Hamilton. It's a well-known fact that Max prefers an incredibly pointy car. However, his car seemingly refused to turn in under braking as soon as any load was put on the front end of the car, with Max claiming that even with an extreme change to his brake bias, that the car just wouldn't turn in. However, it wasn't just the performance of the car, as Max was furious about how the race had been handled by Red Bull, with him being frustrated with the fact that the team failed to prevent the undercut and consistently put him out in backmarker traffic. Showing his dismay with the decisions, he said, "It's quite impressive how we let ourselves get undercut and just completely
incident
race." Responding to a sarky quip from his engineer, Giampiero Lambiase, about Max not easing the tyres in, Max was clearly furious not only with his engineer for the snide remark, but for the team putting him on a compromised strategy, with him slamming the team, saying, "No mate, don't give me—
it's unfair.
You gave me the
Unfair
strategy, I'm trying to rescue what's left," before going into yet more expletives. But the radio battle culminated with GP shutting down Max and clearly being absolutely done. This back and forth followed the incident that we'll get onto in just a moment, so be sure to stick around. "He moved under braking," says Verstappen on the radio. "I'm not getting into this on the radio. It's childish on the radio. It's childish." However, Max claimed that there was no need for apologies following the race, something Horner would go on to support as well, with him being visibly confused when that was suggested in the media pen, something which led to Max saying something that could be quite problematic if it was pointed at his own team, as he said, "I don't think we need to apologize, I just think we need to do a better job. I don't know why people think you cannot be vocal on a radio. This is a sport. If some people don't like that, then stay home." And to anyone outside of the team who looked down on his response and general demeanor over the weekend, Max had a very simple message. They can all
Suck my balls, mate.
So, bad strategy, a seemingly impotent upgrade package despite bringing the most over the weekend, meaning they invested an awful lot for not a lot of impact, and not only that, a publicly humiliating lack of calm and composure from both the team and the driver, and all the while, Perez has his best race of recent memory, finishing behind Max after he dropped back following the incident, and would have even been outside the reach of a penalty if he had actually gotten one. At least this time, Perez has the excuse of starting at the back of the field, though, yet again, why was he there? The Constructors' Championship looks like it is massively under threat, with McLaren, Mercedes, and even the massively inconsistent Ferrari all outscoring Red Bull in recent races, and their lead driver is clearly acting in a way that even his team finds reprehensible when under pressure in regards to both on-track battles and the Drivers' Championship. All the while, Max is clearly feeling more and more let down by his team, who ever since the announcement of Newey's departure, whether mere coincidence or not, have failed to make any steps forward with the car and seem to no longer be capable of coming back over the course of a weekend. Now, clearly the nadir of this race for Verstappen and Red Bull was the contact with Lewis Hamilton, with Max once again being put behind the British driver on fresher tyres, something which he made clear was not ideal for him earlier in the race. Max was getting more and more frustrated both with the situation and with his team, with it culminating in him fully sending it down the inside of turn 1, locking up and continuing straight instead of turning. Max would try and claim this situation is the inverse of what he was punished for in Austria, but sadly for Max, those that aren't deaf, dumb or blind could witness that this simply wasn't the case. When talking about the incident, Max was quick to put the blame on Lewis, claiming that he moved under braking, even though he was just taking the corner while leaving room on the inside. I went for a move that was fully on, but then in the middle of the braking zone when I was already committed to the move, he suddenly keeps warping right. If I wouldn't have turned while braking straight, I would have made contact with him. At one point, naturally, I locked up because he kept turning to the right. People always made a lot of what happened in Austria, if it was not correct, blah blah blah, but that's on the initial move, and then you just brake straight. You hold your wheel quite straight. So in Max's opinion, the physical cause of the incident lays entirely at Hamilton's feet, something which the 7-time world champion merely laughed at. However, the end of his post-race interview made his thoughts on the real cause of the incident clear, as he said, "We'll see. At the end of the day, if we would have done better in the strategy, you are not in that position." So the fact of the matter is, Max believes that the incident would not have happened if the team just did their job, which, yeah. And that's the exact same thing that could have been said back in Austria. I think something Verstappen said earlier in the weekend made his current feeling about the team clear, as he said this about the upgrades that the team brought to Hungary. Not optimal, but maybe we have a different opinion about that. At least they know I don't make excuses, I'm always very realistic about that. Maybe not everyone is on the same wavelength, that doesn't frustrate me, but I do think some people need to wake up a little. We don't have to go into detail about who they are. And Max doubled down on the fact that the team was underperforming after the race, with him finally tasting what Sergio Perez has had for the past quarter of a season, as the advantage that was afforded to him last year ran out. You can't rely on a little pace advantage. Maybe last year when the car was a lot faster than everyone else, but in the position we are now in, we can't do that anymore. That's why today was a tough race for us. Naturally, that frustrates me because I want things to be done better. I'm realistic. Today we couldn't have beaten the McLarens, but a P3 was on the cards if we had been on it a bit more. I was just annoyed with today. Maybe the team at the time didn't realize that they were doing things wrong, or maybe didn't see it was so severe. With him clearly feeling the team doesn't have their priorities in order, as well as the pre-existing pressures from earlier in the season, one has to wonder just how low this can go. He's been carrying the team in the championships and is now being put in more and more compromising positions due to the shortfalls both in the technical departments and the strategy department, and these shortfalls are the sole reason that he has found himself embroiled in some 2021-esque controversies in recent weeks, colliding with both his then championship rival today, as well as his current championship rival a few weeks ago in Austria. In fact, the only thing that Red Bull did this weekend was weakly stick up for Max after the race, with Horner blindly acting as if Max yet again did nothing wrong, and having a 1,000-yard stare when any kind of accountability was asked for from the team, and even went as far as to dismiss that there was any kind of tension between GP and Max. The consistent theme across both this weekend and Austria, as well as other weekends where things go wrong, is Red Bull massively dropping the ball and not being held nearly as accountable due to just how visibly hot-headed their driver is, something which Red Bull just can't keep hiding behind at this point. The long and the short of it is, Red Bull simply aren't doing good enough, no matter what you think about Max. Max's frustrations that were on display in Hungary are down to that simple fact, and if things don't change for the better, then it really is a question of not if, but when he truly snaps.